held that one really close to the mic, so that was.
It sounded good. It came across well. Let
me give me a first sip here.
What's on the menu right now?
This is a Terrapin Cryosphere.
I don't know what that means.
I don't know. They had like an IPA variety pack, so I went with that because I like IPAs. So especially during the summer.
There you go. Can't beat it.
Yeah, man. But we're back in the saddle. Another episode coming at you, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Had a couple new things that we're working on just to toss out there for everybody who probably listens on iTunes or Spotify. We do have the YouTube channel, and we're trying to create some more content for that. So Mike came up with the idea of, first of all, just kind of reclipping some of our old episodes for some parts and segments that we really enjoyed, just to throw back out there, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, real quick, real easy to digest. And then also we came up with the idea to start doing some reaction videos. We have a lot of guests on that have marched a lot of really awesome and successful groups. So it's kind of fun to relive some of those lot videos or performance videos. If everyone hasn't seen, we just did the one with Daniel Recorder.
Yep.
Sorry, I almost butchered that. I almost said Recorder, which is funny because he said people called him that.
The pilot episode.
Yeah.
We did the pilot
where we
one
just
first.
Went through. If you haven't checked it out yet, we just went through an old 2012 Blue Coats. I'm having a ball right now. Blue Coats video from rehearsal, and just he was able to give us some backstory and tell us some really funny things that happened throughout the course of that video and stuff. But yeah,
just kind of figured it'd be a good idea to take these people we already talked to and maybe gain some more insight pretty much into the groups that they marched, and it might trigger funny stories from their past. And maybe if a part's really weird, we can pause and just kind of talk about what the heck did you guys just play, and just kind of riff off of each other. And so we think it was pretty cool. We've gotten some positive feedback so far, so hopefully we fine-tuned some of the audio stuff this time around, and we'll be recording one of those, with a couple of those actually, with today's guest after we're finished recording this podcast. So let's just go ahead and get into this. So welcome everyone to the Aged Out Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Mike Fantini, and with me as always is
Evan Worrell.
And make sure to hit subscribe on that YouTube channel, like the video if you like the content we put out, leave a comment with any questions or thoughts based on what we do here and what that episode's about, and subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you're an audio listener, and hit us up on patreon.com/agedoutpodcast if you want to give us any kind of financial support. So now that we got all that out of the way, Evan, do you want to take it, and we'll get into introducing our guest and see where it takes us?
Yeah, certainly. Absolutely. Today's guest is one that Mike and I have communicated with through just Facebook Messenger. We've watched this dude in several lots, yelled in a lot of those lots. A guy that we've been fortunate enough to meet just through the network of band, the 2 degrees of separation that we've talked about on here several times. And he has a lot of experience and was probably exposed to the marching arts at a much earlier age than most of us, definitely way earlier than me, which we'll get into how that happened. But for today's guest, we have Cameron Halls joining us. Welcome, man.
How's it going? Good to be here.
Well, yeah, man, we appreciate it. How's the weather up in Michigan?
Honestly, the weather's great in Michigan. A lot of people are always afraid of the snow and tell me how much they hate the snow. But honestly, the summer in Michigan is great. We have a lot of lakes, at least from where I'm from. So there's a lot of opportunities to still go to the beach and go swimming and do some fun stuff over the summer, even though we're, up north, technically.
Heck yeah. The summer's been really hot here, so hopefully that means it's been nice and warm for you guys.
Yeah, it hasn't been too bad. Not too bad.
Kentucky's been real bad.
Yeah, it's been toasty, man. It's still getting up in the 90s in September, which isn't super uncommon, but with Kentucky weather, it could be 90 today, 60 tomorrow. So who knows?
Yeah.
It's bipolar weather for sure.
I'm sure we'll get into some more of the weather talking about some of your college stuff later, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure some of those were brutal, quite frosty.
Yeah, to say the least.
But I kind of alluded to it already, that you were exposed to band and, well, more specifically marching arts, probably a little bit earlier than most people. So why don't you kind of walk us through your journey, how you got into music, how you got into band and all that?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So, I come from a musical family. Little voice crack there. Um, so actually, both of my parents met in the marching band at Michigan State. That's how they met.
Sparty on.
Sparty on. So I almost, owed it to myself to end up going down that pathway and doing the band there. But even all four of my grandparents and my sister went to Michigan State, and two of my grandparents on my mom's side were both music majors. So
I was going to say grandparents in the band too.
Yeah.
In your blood.
So my grandpa was really the first one to really get me starting on an instrument, and that was actually saxophone in the 4th grade. My mom played saxophone, and I was like, that's the coolest thing in the world. So I started playing saxophone, doing all that, and then it came to 5th grade band. And a lot of elementary schools don't even do 5th grade band anymore, actually, which is kind of disappointing. It's happening for a number of reasons, but they told me that I had to decide out of 4 instruments, I could play one of them, and it was either flute, clarinet, trumpet, or trombone. And they said, well, honestly, the closest instrument with like the fingerings or whatever is flute. And I said, okay, whatever, I'll suck it up and play flute for a year. And so I switched from saxophone to flute, and then ended up actually sticking with that throughout middle school and a little bit of high school. And I didn't actually really start playing percussion until 8th grade. I was playing flute in the concert band, and I was doing that. And then I actually went to my first drum corps show in 2010. I believe that was like the Western Michigan Kalamazoo show. I don't know where did you guys march in that show?
I was there. I was performing.
Yeah. I was there with Crown.
Yeah, I was there with the Blue Stars.
Yeah.
Yep. You guys were both there. So you guys were both performing at my very first drum corps show.
There you go.
Wow, that's funny.
Pretty cool. Cheers to that.
Cheers to that.
It just means we're old, Evan.
Yeah. That was 2010, and that's where I got the bug. I was like, man, I really, really want to do this. And I kind of already knew my dad had done some of it, and he had kind of told me about it, but really being there in person at that show,
It hits different when you're there in person, man. The horn line's just...
The one that really did it for me was Cavaliers. I was a huge Cavaliers fan for a like Nice. That was the year they did like the Mad World. They all did the This Is My Rifle thing. I just thought that was the coolest thing. So then in 8th grade, that would have been when I was in 7th grade. And then in 8th grade, I was still playing flute and band, but my high school did like a combined indoor drumline thing, it was called Waterford United Percussion. And I ended up joining that, and I played xylophone in that because I was in 8th grade, so I couldn't be in the drumline. And then in high school was when I actually joined the drumline. I played bass drum for my first year. So that was really when I actually started drumming, was my freshman year of high school. So I didn't start drumming as early as you guys might have thought. My dad was always like, he was not going to force, drumming upon me. He wasn't going to make me do it, but it just kind of ended up that way. So I started doing that. I was playing bass drum my first year, and then I ended up switching to snare drum my second year. And throughout this time, I was, going to WGI shows and going to drum corps shows and continuing to learn more about the activity. And then the first group that I actually marched in terms of playing on a drum in a group was Motor City Percussion. That's a group out of Livonia when I was in it. I'm not sure where they're out of now, but it's
I remember that group.
Open class.
Were they? Yeah, they were open class. What year did you do it again?
I did it in 2014.
Okay.
So in between, like, I guess that in your late start to percussion, was your dad like, all right, if we're going to do this, like, I'm going to show you how to do it?
Honestly, like he was again, like he didn't force it upon me at all. He would help me if I wanted a lesson, he would give me a lesson, he would help me out, but he wasn't not in any way, forcing me to practice or, saying,
I was wondering about that.
And chop
Cameron,
out.
you didn't practice your hour today. Like,
no,
get back in the room.
It was not like that at all. And really, my dad taught me for a while, but my biggest instructor in high school was actually my current professor at Michigan State University, John Weber. You guys might have heard that name. We'll probably talk about him a little bit later, but I started taking lessons with him probably my sophomore year of high school because I pretty much knew I was going to go to Michigan State, and he was the guy there. Funny enough, this guy, John Weber, his instructor in college at Oklahoma State is one of my dad's best friends. His name's Wayne Bovenshit. He's the director of the drumline, one of the band directors at Oklahoma State. So another kind of small world thing. And so I I had known John Weber for a while, and I started taking lessons with him probably like my sophomore year of high school. And then I started doing Motor City Percussion, where my snare tech was the RL Chieftain, the one, Brad Perry. One of my absolute favorite people on this entire planet. He's great.
I love Brad, and I still can't, like, he's obviously super smart, but I feel like if I met him at a bar and he like was like, yeah, I'm a surgeon, I would probably look at him and go, what?
No, you're not.
Yeah.
That's just a pickup line used for chicks.
And Brad was great. He also was an MSU Rhythm X guy, so I had some connections with him, and it was great learning from him. So that was my junior year of high school. That was like my first time marching, being on the floor, being in a real competitive drum line.
Something outside of like your
something outside of my high
not
school.
run of the mill, but regular high school.
Yeah, because after that 8th grade year, the high school didn't continue to do the indoor thing, so I kind of had to find another outlet to do that.
Which those uniforms, by the way, with that like
the cape,
green it was a chevron and that superhero cape,
it's a superhero show.
Where it made me think of something out of like the movie Incredibles, like I'm Syndrome or whatever that guy's name was.
Yeah, that was superhero. I'm trying to remember the show. The name of the show changed quite a few times, but it was basically about superheroes. That was the gist of the show. And then in 2015, that next winter was the first year that I auditioned for. That actually wasn't the first year I auditioned for a world-class group, actually, but that was the first time I made a world-class group, and that was North Coast Academy, which is unfortunately not around anymore.
Rip.
Rip North Coast. The first group that I auditioned for actually was Eastside Fury.
Ooh, I remember Eastside Fury.
I auditioned for Eastside Fury. They needed a snare drummer. In 2013, they needed a snare drummer for whatever reason, and I sent in a video, which was atrocious. That one actually might be on my
sophomore year of high school, right?
I think it's on my YouTube channel. You guys can watch it sometime if you want, but it's pretty bad. And this was my sophomore year of high school.
Should we do a reaction video of your audition for Eastside?
You know what? I think we should.
I'm in. I'm all in.
And they said, you know what? Come out, like, see what it's about. And them seeing the video, they probably knew I wasn't gonna make it. But it was still a good experience for me, and I went out there and spent the weekend with them, and I actually ended up learning drill to their opener with them in 2013. I would have been 15.
Wow.
And I got cut at the end of the weekend, but they were super nice about it. The instructors were Dan Poulter and Dickie Thornton.
We marched doctor.
Yeah, another 2 Michigan State guys.
Yeah.
So those guys were great. They cut me, which was fine. I was not good enough. And I auditioned the next year again, actually, and I was a lot closer, but still didn't make the cut. And that's when I did MCP. And a lot of those guys, when Eastside folded, a lot of them either went to Redline or they went to North Coast. So I had a lot of friends who were kind of picking those two, and I decided to go the North Coast route. And I did that for a few years, 15, 16, 17. In between there, I did the 2015 U.S. Army All-American Marching Band, kind of a long name. Basically just a all-star high school marching band.
What was the event where, like, what was the performance venue for that?
The performance venue was it was at the Alum Dome. Is that how you say it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And it was just for the All-American football game. So it was like Under Armour has all their All-American football players, all the best high school kids or high school seniors, and they had an All-American band. So
that's
they flew us out.
That's a sweet stadium. I love that stadium.
It was a great opportunity to do that too. The Army flew us out there for free. Everything totally covered. They had like a big assembly at my school for it.
That's pretty sick.
It was awesome, and that's actually where I met. I'm sure you guys know Phil Andrews. He's
a
drummer. So I did it that year with Phil, and that's how I met Phil, was doing this All-American thing. And Phil was the reason I ended up going to Crown in 2017.
Phil for the future.
Yeah, Phil of the future. And so, I did North Coast 15, 16, 17, and did the Army band thing for 1 year, kind of in that time. And then the summer of 16 was when I did my first drum corps. I actually marched my first drum corps. So I had auditioned for a few groups. I auditioned for Phantom, Blue Stars, Crossman, Legends, and actually I got cut from quite a few of these groups. And 16 was, it was after my, I think, freshman year of college. And I had said, you know what, I've gotten cut from a few groups, and I just kind of I kind of set my expectations pretty high. I wanted to march Phantom. I wanted to march a top 12 group. And I was like, you know what? I got to humble myself a little bit, and I'm going to march an open class corps and get my chops up and play for a summer and see what I can do with that.
Heck yeah, good for you. It's a smart way to do it, man.
Totally glad I did that. Totally glad I did that.
Yeah, I think so many people make that mistake of like, I have to march top 12. I have to march top 12. Like, very few people can just start in the top 12, and that's not a knock on them.
Yeah.
Part of it is like timing it right, the right season where there were a lot of age outs the year before, which doesn't always happen at the groups you want to go. Like if you audition for a group and you're like, okay, I got cut, it's too late. There's staffs that will help place you at open class corps.
Absolutely.
All these staffs know each other. Don't just keep beating your head against a brick wall. Like if you're not making it in a top 12 group, you might need to humble yourself like you just said you did and say, all right, I'm going to go march this lower placing corps, get some experience, get the chops, and come back. And most of the time when people do that, they make where they want to make next year because that year of experience makes all the difference.
And I don't mean to like single out like the drumline world, but it often happens so that there's very few spots, especially in like a drumline position.
I was going to say the drumline thing seems like it's way more competitive than like the brass line. I mean, you're talking, you got 9 spots in a snare line, sometimes 8, and
there's 5 vets.
Any vets, which most groups want, there's like typically 3 to 5, I would say. So you're looking at like 3 spots.
Yeah,
and there's like 200 people showing up.
Yeah, it's very, very intimidating going to those auditions sometimes. I remember just being in an auditorium or whatever and just seeing like 50 snare drummers on pads, and I'm like, oh man, here we go.
Everybody's pretty good.
I hope I'm good. And doing Music City also was a great networking thing. I met a lot of people, a lot of actually Mystique people that I'm still friends with today. The guy I marched next to and my seat partner that year was this guy, Elijah Loy, who ended up being the center for Mystique for the past 3 years, marching cadets. Another really great snare drummer, really great dude. So that was a great drumming thing, great networking thing, great way for me to get my foot in the door doing drum corps. And then the next summer was when I auditioned for Crown. That would have been the 17 summer. And that was probably the most prepared I had been for an audition probably ever, was Crown 17. I spent so long learning that music. I had talked to Phil about coming out. I remember seeing them in 2016, the Relentless show. I just was blown away. I thought that was amazing. I thought that drum line was killer, horn line was killer. What they won like 3 caption awards, I think, in 2016. Isn't that right?
Maybe. I'm gonna find out right now, but
they won guard, they won Vig, they won brass.
They probably won brass for sure.
Yeah, they usually win brass.
And they ended up getting 3rd somehow. I don't know how the numbers worked out.
GE, man.
Won
GE.
3 captions. And,
that was the year Blue Coats won.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, I saw Crown that year. I was like, I'm going to do that. That's amazing. I'm going to do that. I had heard great things from Phil and some other people. Another Michigan State guy did Crown that year. So I had planned on doing that for quite a while. Remember seeing Crown in the lot in 16. Obviously Music City, we got done pretty early so I could go and check out a lot of groups. And pretty much that entire summer I was like, okay, I think I'm going to do Crown. And Music City ended up being a great place for me because Mystique guys, we played loud. We chopped out a lot, a lot of run and gun kind of stuff. And that was a great way to set me up for success going into Crown auditions.
Nice.
That was a tight finish that year. 16 first, 97.65, third, 97.08. So it was pretty close between 1 to 3. Yikes.
Small margin of error.
Good year.
Very good year.
So then I did Crown 17, and then the next winter was when I auditioned for Rhythm X. And I had kind of already planned I was going to do that, but it was just kind of convenient that North Coast ended up not doing a group again. So that kind of made my decision pretty easy.
It makes that decision easy, but like that decision shouldn't be hard. Like,
no.
If you want to go do something, you want to go do something. I'm never about like the staff that tries to like maybe guilt someone into returning or guilt someone that leaves. Like, man, if a kid doesn't want to be in your organization anymore, like, don't make them.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
either one, they value the time that they were there and want to move on to something else and get a new experience, or two, they didn't have a good time there, which is on the staff, and they want to move on and do something else. Because that's the staff's job, is to make sure that your kids have a good experience and, I don't know, make memories. Obviously, there's a competitive aspect that we want to do well too, but you just want your kids to have a good experience.
Exactly.
So,
in the way I look at it is that you sign a 1-year contract.
Yeah, basically.
It'd be different if I signed a multiple-year contract. But it's like I said, I'm going to be a member of this group for a year, and
everyone's a free agent.
And you gave them money.
Exactly.
And you paid them.
So with North Coast folding, it kind of made the decision easy. But I was planning on doing that for a while, especially after doing Crown for a year. It's kind of like the unwritten rule for X. It's like you got to march a top 12 group if you want to be in Rhythm X. Just because the talent level is so high, and the mental stamina that you need to be successful in that group is off the charts. And that
the rate at which changes are made just demand that of you.
Yeah. So that was great to do Crown. That set me up perfectly for success at X auditions. And we were just talking about, funny enough, there being a ton of competition at auditions. I remember walking in the snare room for Rhythm X 2018. This would have been in, September or October of 2017. And I drove down with Max Neves and some other Michigan guys. And I was obviously pretty nervous. That's like I hear so many things about, Rhythm X auditions. There's like 60 snare drummers there, you know? And I showed up and there were 9 snare drummers at the audition, and we took 8. I remember, setting a drum up and just kind of talking to some of the guys, and Josh Brickey walked in, and I think Jared Thomas walked in. Josh is like, okay, this is what we got. Let's drum. Let's see what we got. And lucky enough, we took 8 guys that showed up. Those were kind of the 8 that I think people had planned on showing up. And
I was going to say,
one guy was, I don't remember his name. He was a good kid, but the 8 guys that we had were solid, and we obviously ended up doing pretty well. But that was very funny. 8 out of 9 people ended up making the snare line, and that was one of the best snare lines I've ever been on my entire life.
A lot of that goes to Rhythm X does a lot of off-season recruiting over the DCI summer, and now I feel like
you're talking about the networking thing with Music City Drum Corps, but like the networking thing at Rhythm X is like a real thing, because a lot of those dudes that teach at Rhythm X were also teaching in the summer, so they'd be like chit-chatting people up. I remember at Dublin, Ohio show in 2009 at Crown, my dad was sitting in the stands and somehow just ended up talking to Josh Brickey. It's like, oh, my son's in the snare line at Crown, blah, blah, blah. I think he maybe wants to come try out at X. And so Josh was like, yeah, tell him to do that. And that's just kind of the way. And when Josh was on tour or something, they talk to people. I mean, not like in a manipulative or malicious way, but they're like, hey, man, you should come audition.
Yeah. If they want you, they're going to tell you, like, try to push.
Yeah. Yeah. And the biggest thing I can say about that is, even if, it's not like someone has to literally reach out and send you an invitation to audition. You know what I mean?
No,
the biggest thing I can say is that go to an audition. A lot of the way people get found are there's plenty of people in Rhythm X who have auditioned for the group and didn't make it their first year and come back. It's fine. You know what I mean? But the biggest thing I hear from a lot of people who say, oh yeah, I'm gonna audition for X. I'm gonna audition for Blue Devils or some very top tier group like that. They never actually show up at auditions, which is like, that's the worst thing you can do. That's the easiest way to get cut from an audition, is to not even show up. So
the 2010 and 2011 X auditions were similar to that experience that you just described. Like, there wasn't a ton of people there, but the people that were there were high quality. The 2012 audition was completely different. We cut like 7 dudes that marched top 12.
That was
a little wild, but
that was an interesting.
Sometimes that's tough, man.
There was, it was an interesting audition. That 12X audition was, because wasn't there a North Texas kid that Josh liked a lot?
Yeah, he went to North Texas and had just marched like Boston for a couple summers.
Yeah,
ended up not making it.
And it was like, all right, well, we have 7 vets from last year, and then we have like 2 other center snares that showed up, like a 3-year Blue Coats vet.
Andy Alfred, Frankie, and Dick showed up.
Yeah.
On top of the 7 vets, and that was the 10.
Some pretty good choices.
Yeah, so it's like, this kid's good, but we have, again, these 10 already. It's like, who do we cut? And X doesn't really cut vets. I think it's only happened
That's false.
Well, it doesn't really cut vets. Let me finish. It's only happened. You can count on one hand the number of times from the snare line they've cut a vet.
I don't know the statistic on that.
I don't know of a single person. But
I know of one.
I don't know
it was
anybody.
Before even mine and Evan's time. I know of one.
Oh, okay.
And
I know of one.
It's a while ago.
Evan, you're probably thinking of the same one that I am, but
Maybe.
I think that might be the only time it's happened.
First year.
Huh?
He got cut my first year in 10. He showed up
right.
at auditions, got cut. Yikes.
Yeah. But there's usually more going on behind the scenes when that happens.
There for
beyond
sure was. But anyway,
drumming ability.
we're sidebarring like crazy right now.
Moving on.
Honestly, that brings another point up, which is like I know a lot of people that kind of complain about like the politics in drum corps and politics in WGI. But I think a lot of that stuff is way more important than people take for granted.
The social aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, you got to enjoy the time that you're having when you're there. And if there's one guy that you don't really like, I mean, that can kind of make or break a season.
For sure.
And I think, and I've even been to the point where I was cut at certain times, and I was like, oh, this is BS. They're taking all their boys, and it's like, that's not necessarily a problem that they're taking their boys. They're all good friends and they play well together. And you don't necessarily need the 9 best people or 8 best people. You need the 8 people that are going to play the best together, which is not always reflective of the skill level.
Yeah,
very true.
Very
so
true.
It's not a bad thing to get lessons from whoever you're trying to get a spot from. Say I want to audition for the Blue Stars drum line, get in contact with the snare tech or whoever's teaching that drum line and meet them and introduce yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's definitely not a problem to go into an audition and have the people know who you are.
No, definitely not. It definitely helped me my second year when I actually made Crown, because the first year when I got cut, I had gone and met everybody. I met Zach. I met those vets like Lino and some of the other people that were in the drum line. So when I went back in 2009, it was way more familiar. First of all, it made me more comfortable because there were familiar faces. And I was like, I'm not just a statistic or another pad in the room. Like, they know who I am.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So obviously talked about the X auditions, X experience going there. Let's kind of back up a little bit just to catch ourselves up. We've been going like winter, summer, winter, summer, winter, summer, but there's the fall in there too, which is pretty cool. You spoke earlier how you were kind of just destined to be in the Sparty band and go to MSU. So you end up going in 2015, I believe it was, to Michigan State University, which is another MSU, not to be confused with Mike and mine MSU, much more well-known one in Michigan State. But
for good and bad reasons.
What was that?
I said for good and bad reasons.
Well, I would say definitely for a lot more good than bad.
Yeah.
But so Michigan State is obviously a program that has been very, very well known for its excellence and history. So you had mentioned earlier, both your mom and your dad, your grandparents went there. What was that like as far as like auditioning for that and then making that and kind of like maybe continuing the family tradition, I guess you would say?
Yeah. So I guess a little history, family history. So my dad was a snare drummer at Michigan State in the 80s, as my mom was a saxophone player in the 80s. My grandfather was a bass drummer. He was I think the last single bass drummer that they had in the band. This is my mom's dad, not my dad's dad, but my mom's dad was a bass drummer in the band in the 60s. So I really am like a third generation band member, you could say, and my sister was in the band too. So I pretty much had no choice.
You're like a legacy, I guess
where
what
I
they would
was,
say in that fraternity world.
Yeah, on where I was going to go to college. I had pretty much always decided I was going to go to Michigan State, and I had pretty much had this plan in my mind. It, obviously a couple things change here and there, but I applied for a couple different schools, but I pretty much had decided I was going to go to Michigan State right around as I was getting into high school. I was like, I'm going to do that. And so in terms of like the legacy aspect, like, yeah, it's kind of cool when there's alumni around, but it's not that I don't like that people talk about my relationship with my dad sometimes. I obviously love my dad. He's great. But sometimes I definitely wanted to just kind of do my own thing, and not necessarily be compared to what my dad was doing all the time, which honestly, that was exactly what I got at Michigan State. I was a little bit worried going in. I was going to constantly be like harassed about it, but it ended up being fine. Everybody at Michigan State is great, and I think it's great being on the Michigan State drumline because it's a ton of fun and it's a way to like keep your hands up and have a great time in the fall and not have to have like this weird transition period where it's like, okay, I've been drumming all summer and then I have to stop for like 2 months and not really touch a drum unless you have access to it, But I mean, Michigan State band rehearses a lot, as does every Big Ten or big university band. They practice all the time. So I was drumming every day, at least a couple hours, with a drum on, Monday through Friday, and then every game day, pretty much every fall. So I was going summer, fall, winter, summer, fall, winter, summer, fall, winter for like 5 years, 6 years straight.
Man, so you really didn't stop.
This summer was really the first time that I stopped.
Was it weird?
It was weird, but I was okay taking a break from it.
Refreshing.
For a little bit. Yeah, we can get into that a little bit more of that later. But
I bet some of those rehearsals up there were cold.
Yeah, man, and it's like we were talking about the weather earlier. It can, especially in the October kind of time period, you can go from having a 80-degree day, sunny, you're taking your shirt off at rehearsal. Next week it could be 30 and snowing, and then back to 80. It can change on a dime, and let me tell you, man, it can get cold. It can get really, really cold.
30-degree rim shots suck.
Yeah, Michigan State canceled school, I think 3 years ago, for the first time, I think in 50 years or something, because the wind chill was, I think, -40.
Oh my God. Thank you.
So they canceled class for a couple of days. That obviously wasn't during marching band season, but I'd say that the coldest it probably got, on a game day on a Saturday when it's pouring snow, it can probably get down to 10, 15 degrees. And we obviously do our best to try and combat that, but, hand warmers.
No, I was going to say no amount of hand warmers is going to.
Yeah. We all kind of have our own way. We have these rain jackets that we wear that kind of help us keep warm, and everybody in the line has like 6 hand warmers in each pocket so that when you put your hands in, it's, kind of like an oven, keeping your hands warm. But I'm telling you, the worst is when it's cold and it's raining. I almost hated the rain more than I hated the cold.
Yeah, man, when you get – because, like, at least I guess to some degree the snow will kind of, like, fall off or brush off. Yeah. You get wet and, like, soggy.
Yeah. And a game day can be long. I mean,
oh, yeah, I bet.
I don't know if you guys did college band at all, but at least with Michigan State stuff, oftentimes our call time would be 6 a.m. This is for a noon game, on – it's all by TV times, right? So noon, 3 o'clock, 7:30. So we'd be, waking up at 5:30 a.m., walking to rehearsal, and we have rehearsal at 6 a.m. And you're probably, for a noon game, you're not getting home until 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And if it just happens that it's raining that day, I mean, what are you going to do? Oh, it's raining, band's not going to go. Obviously, that's not the case. So there's times when you step outside of our, it's called demonstration hall, where we start every game day, and you could just be getting rained on for 12 hours straight. And sometimes that's
thankfully, like, we did college band, but the seriousness of it was in the marching band, I would say, is probably matches what you guys did. But as far as like the athletics part of it, I mean, Morehead State's a non-scholarship program. It is Div 1, but it's non-scholarship. Mm-hmm. I mean, we had 6 a.m. call times, but for a new game, I'm like, all right, I'm back in my dorm by 4, and I probably went back before that after our morning rehearsal to change before I went for the call time to like march down to the stadium. So it's a lot different. Yep. Yeah. But on the flip side of that, like, you're getting like a front row ticket to these just like epic Big Ten battles, which I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure everyone's seen the Michigan State play with the fumble. I was at that game. I got to see that live. That entire 2015 year was amazing, aside from the last game where we got blown out by Alabama. But that entire season was great. And like you said, the primetime big games was amazing. That's obviously a big plus. But for me, it was a great way to drum every day. And it honestly is a amazing social thing, too. That's a lot of, I guess, something that people don't talk about all the time with college band. It's like a lot of people in there are not music majors. Most of the people in the band at Michigan State, I mean, it's 300 people. I'd say maybe 30 of them are music majors, 40 of them are music majors, and everyone else is engineering, computer science, various majors. So really a lot of those people are doing it because they love music, but it's a great way to start college and to start off with a ton of friends. I'm sure going to a big university like Michigan State, I mean, I think population is 50,000 or something.
Jeez.
Everything is obviously kind of weird. About. Yeah, it's definitely kind of weird now because everything's online. But, I mean, you're a really, really small fish in a big pond. And it was great being able to come in my freshman year and, boom, you got like 20 friends you can hang out with. And it's a great way to start school and have a lot of support systems. And that was a great part of doing the drumline. And
some of my best friends are from college. Like,
yeah, me too.
Not to knock any of the people that I had in high school, but the people that I did like college drumline with are probably the ones that I'm the closest to, I would say. Like Mike, who does this with me, my friend Brent Hume, who coincidentally went to high school with me, and then my good friend Dean Hickman, like a lot of those dudes. Casey, I could go down the line and just be like,
there's a lot of them.
Yeah, and going back to the drumming aspect, there's the best part about the drumline at Michigan State is that everyone is good. Everyone is good. I mean, I don't mean to like rank different college drumlines, but there's college drumlines that you can think of that are good. I mean, Michigan State is up there. UNT is up there. UMass is up there.
Western Carolina comes
Western
up.
Carolina
RCC.
is great. There's a ton of great HBCU bands. And it was really great to – I know a lot of people like kind of like to BS the college drumline thing, and everyone kind of jokes with me about, oh, you do college band, blah, blah, blah. You got your game yesterday or whatever. But, hey, I really do think that we play pretty good.
MSU is incredible.
Videos. Like, Racer X. I like that one.
The stuff that I love to pride ourselves in is that we're able to flip the switch and have a really good time. Occasionally, too good of a time. But, most of the time we're able to flip the switch and be able to play pretty good. And there's a ton of people in the Michigan State line that also march drum corps and do WGI. And obviously there's a lot of really notable Rhythm X people that we both know that did Michigan State and Rhythm X. And it was just a great way for me to keep drumming during the school year.
For sure.
Nice. Well, let's keep this moving and let's get into where you went. So you did X for 3 seasons, right?
Yep.
All right. So your last season of X was what year?
19? This past year, 20 was my last in quotations year.
Okay. Well, technically, you have another season, don't you?
Yeah, technically half of an age out right now. I don't really know what's going on yet.
Everything's in limbo.
Yeah, everything's in limbo.
Everything's in purgatory.
Yeah, possibly aged out. I guess I'm not really sure yet. But yeah, so I marched Rhythm X 18, 19, and 20, or half of 20, or whatever you want. I mean, honestly, most of the season was done. I mean, we really did like 90% of the season. We just didn't
the performance stuff
3 or 4 weeks or something. Yeah.
So
yeah, I started and ended up doing 3 years at Rhythm X, and then backing up, I did Crown 17, 18, and then for my last year, I did BD in 2019.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. So you obviously did Crown in 17 and 18. What about Blue Devils like attracted you to want to go there after 2 successful seasons at Crown?
Yeah. So one of the big things, obviously, my dad is also an alumni of the Blue Devils. He was a snare drummer in 1985. Before that, he marched Phantom 83, 84. And before that, he marched a group called the Saguenairs, which was, I think, back there, Division A, or I'm not sure what they called it back then. Whatever open class was back in the 80s.
The only thing that I know is that prior to World and Open, it was Div 1, Div 2, Div 3. And then there was something else before that, I think, too.
Yeah. Funny enough, so he marched this group Saguenairs for a couple of years. Saguenairs turned into this thing called Northern Aurora, which turned into this thing called North Coast Academy. So I really ended up also marching kind of the same group sort of as my dad. The name of the organization that North Coast was Saguenairs Youth Organization. So it's kind of ironic that I ended up doing that too.
That's funny.
But
nice.
So it was always, I'm sure everybody has this thought, but it's always kind of in the back of people's mind about, do I want to do the BD drumline? I'm sure that's not the case for everybody. I'm not speaking for a ton of people or everybody rather, but I've talked to many people who have said, Oh yeah, I would have liked to have done BD at some point, and I really wanted to get that experience and know what that was like. Obviously, there's a ton of great things that I've heard about the organization in terms of how they treat the members. Obviously, a lot of free days, a lot of free time, a lot of personal responsibility that they put on the members. So that was all very attractive to me. But also from an education part of it, I'm a music ed major. I want to teach band. I want to teach drumline and percussion when I grow up. I say when I grow up in quotations. I'm already kind of grown up. But what's great about BD is the visual aspect of it. I mean, they've won so many visual awards, and it's always very clear that those guys know how to move.
They know how to move
very, very well.
BD's drumline always, in my mind, most summers is the best moving drumline of anybody.
And we can obviously get into a little more of this later, but we just spend so much time in visual. And obviously I didn't totally know that going into it, but I had heard from people, again, it's not like I just go in there without knowing a single person. I had talked to a few people and from Rhythm X who had done Blue Devils, and they had all told me, you're going to do a lot of visual, you're going to do a lot of dance, you're going to do a lot of moving and playing. And that was all very attractive to me because I had gotten a lot of like the music stuff with Crown. Crown is obviously a really, really great organization, musically speaking, and they're great visually speaking. But with BD, they're just almost
a different level,
completely different ballpark with what they're doing with their visual program. Scott Chandler and all those people are just geniuses, and I wanted to do that before I aged out so that I can, essentially be the best educator that I can be when I get older. I want to be able to spread as much of the knowledge that I gained while I marched to my students. So that was honestly the biggest pulling factor for me. Was I just wanted to kind of get a different experience and honestly follow in the footsteps of my dad, which is kind of corny, but it is kind of cool. I mean, that we both got to march there.
I get it. I get it.
I remember seeing Scott, make a post about it, and there was another quad drummer in the line, JJ Pipitone Jr. Was a quad drummer. So I got to march with him. We kind of had two legacy, you could say, people. I remember him making a post about that and thinking, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I totally understand
it. It was a pretty cool thing being able to kind of essentially do exactly what my dad did.
No, I totally get that and understand when people, you're not the first person that I've heard say like they've already been at a very successful drum corps that they had great experiences at, but they switched to a different group. And I've heard it time and time again where they're like, I just want to see what else is out there at this point. Like I did this for a couple of years. I feel like I've grasped what I can from this and I get this approach. There's more than one way to skin the cat with marching percussion and drum lines, especially an approach to the drum and theories and philosophies on sound quality and everything. But wanting to get a different perspective is totally understandable. Like I've told Evan many times that if I could march one more season, I only did 2 corps, 1 year at each. I probably wouldn't do Bluecoats again. And it's not because I have anything against the Bluecoats organization. I loved my summer there, but it would just be for the desire, like you said, to get a different perspective. I'd want to go to maybe a Rennick line or possibly even the Blue Devils just to experience what it's like. Yeah. So in that vein,
Brian Ellis said the same things. He marched Bluecoats for years, and it's like, I just wanted to learn from a different group of people.
Yeah.
I did the same thing. I didn't end up marching my age out, but I did 2 summers at Crown, and I went and actually auditioned for the summer of 2011 Bluecoats and made it, but just I didn't end up doing it because I did some school stuff, but whatever. So yeah, I totally get that, and I don't think it sounds corny at all. Plus, like now you can kind of like one up your dad, be like, well, you marched BD, but we won. So
yeah, he won a drum trophy though. He did win a drum trophy.
Oh, true.
Oof.
Yeah,
he's got that on you.
And another thing is that it's obviously very well known. I mean, people who go to Blue Devils have a good time. It's no secret that we get a lot of time off. We get a lot of there's a lot of personal responsibility in terms of how you. I don't want to say how you behave, but it's very much you have to flip the switch when you're in rehearsal. It's still a drum corps. We still rehearse. We still have, marching and playing, visual rehearsal, tons of stuff that's still drum corps, but you just have to be able to flip the switch very quickly because of the amount of time that they give off.
Do you think they can operate like that simply? Because I would fall into the camp of seeing and hearing that they treat you like a professional athlete is the analogy. You feel the most like a professional athlete when you're in BD versus other groups. Do you think that is a result that they can allow that to be the way it is in the culture because of the talent level they get at this point, and the average age of the core every summer is, I think, usually 21 point something, or like 20 point something, close to 21? Or do you think, because obviously there's probably 18-year-olds in the core, 19-year-olds, but do you think that the average talent level is why, and the maturity and experience is why they can do that? Or is it just they just figured out a way to do things and realize that giving members more downtime, giving them a little more freedom, not treating it a little less like a boot camp type experience, allows people to be more relaxed and more rested, so when they're in rehearsal, they're more efficient?
Sure. I mean, yeah, basically all of those things are true. The talent level in the core is obviously very high, but what I think is great is that all the members and all the vets know what's going on. So they've been doing this thing for a long time, right? They've created this system, and all the vets know what the right thing to do is. So for me, my job was that summer to just do what Brandon did, and Brandon was a great section leader and obviously a very good snare drummer. So for me, it was always like, I'm going to do what he does. And I think it's great that the vets always gave off a really good example. Even, like you said, it's an older group, but there are still some younger guys in there. And the membership was always great to each other. And the membership was always giving off, positive energy, but I'm trying to think of the right word to say. The membership knew how to work smart. And when you get the perfect combination of working smarter and working harder, is I think where that kind of magic happens. Like I said, it's not like we don't work hard. It's not like we're not trying.
Yeah, it's still drum corps at the end of the day.
Yeah, but we know how to do it in the right ways and the right ratios so that, like you said, everyone is well rested. I mean, if we had a long bus ride, we wouldn't be waking up before, I don't know, 11 o'clock, noon.
That's awesome.
And so what that created, at least for me, and I imagine everybody else, was that I was never tired during a rehearsal. Not once was I ever like, man, I'm really beat down. I was never tired.
Smart.
Not a single time. And yeah, we might get one less block out of the day, but everyone's going to be focused for that block. We're going to be rested for that block. We're going to be ready to go, and we're going to get a lot of stuff done. So that's kind of the working smarter aspect of it. But when you're in that rehearsal, I mean, you're sweating, you're working hard, you're drumming, you're doing your best to be successful, but everyone is just in a really good physical and mental mindset.
I mean, it just makes total sense from like a physiological aspect in any other training environment that you would work in. Yeah. I've always wondered that. It's kind of the chicken or the egg question. Like, did BD adopt this style of operation because they had the talent, or did they attract the talent because before that they adopted this style of operation? And I think there's many factors that go into that. Obviously, they've had a very, very cohesive staff that have been there for a long time in many departments that have learned how to operate together, to work together, to design together, to write together in all facets of the drum corps. And so I think that at this point, it's definitely a luxury to have a lot of talent. But there are a lot of drum corps that I think are too afraid to sacrifice rehearsal time because they feel like, oh, we only have so much time. Like, the summer goes by so fast. We got to get this in. So are you sacrificing quality for quantity? Yeah. So, and I mean, it's tough.
It also helps that all the people that are on staff there are geniuses. We're talking guys like Scott Chandler, Scott Johnson, all the people that are teaching and writing there are absolutely geniuses at their craft, and that obviously helps. It helps create a great show, create a great package, and then with the instructional staff and how they present it all to us, it's just the overall package of just the experience is like nothing else. We're talking about like being rested and being ready to go for the day. I mean, like I said, we sleep in obviously, but even after that, first thing you do is you go and you stretch for 45 minutes to an hour. So a lot of people, first things first, we're getting up, we're tracking, we're in battery block, we're in sectionals. The first thing that the entire corps does, I guess aside from the front ensemble, is we all get together and we stretch for 45 minutes, play some music, go out on the field with a yoga mat or a towel, and we just get our bodies ready for the day. And that another thing that does is it prevents injuries. I'm trying to think. I don't know if we had a single horn line alternate on the field this entire summer.
I mean, when you treat
starkly different than your prior 2 summers.
Yeah, because nobody's getting hurt.
When you treat the human body the way it's evolved to be treated and function properly, it's not like too many times. I mean, look at the example of when the kid had the stress fracture in his leg at Crown, and like his leg broke in the middle of the finals run through. Like,
I was there.
If your body is getting that run down throughout the summer, you're probably like, some of it is accidents or injuries are gonna happen. Everyone's body is gonna respond differently to those levels of stress. Everyone's body going in has experienced different levels of stress to be more adjusted to that level of work. But even if you're a rookie,
there's a difference between like a freak thing and an aggravated thing, though.
Exactly. Like if you take care of the body, it's gonna perform for you.
Yeah, and I mean another thing to be said is that different groups do different kinds of shows. I mean it's obvious that, especially those years of Crown, those were super aggro shows. I mean just going 100% the entire time, crazy drill, super fast. So it's not like, I don't want to say that those things are bound to happen, but when you do kind of shows like that, it's obvious that sometimes things it's tough on the body. And a lot of what happened, at least at BD, is that, the way that the drill is written is we don't have a dot book, we don't have dot cards, we don't, it's completely written on the spot, kind of like how Tim Fairbanks does it at X, but they kind of go around and they say, can you make this dot? Can you try this, try that? And a lot of it just ends up, at least for the drum line this year, I can't attest to other years, but at least for us this year, a lot of the drill was pretty manageable because it was just kind of like, oh, can you guys make this? No, we can't. All right, let's just make it a little shorter.
And when you do that, and I've always thought, you can see it every year with different corps, drill writers overestimate what a drumline member can feasibly do at a high level and maintain musical clarity and control of what they're doing. I've seen drill writers ask guys wearing a drum to do things, and I'm like, that's never going to play. They're never going to play well doing that. For example, we make jokes all the time that the Blue Coats 2012 drill for the battery was a cakewalk, and compared to the 2010 summer at Blue Stars, it was. But we played really well because of it. No judge ever called it out and was ever like, hey man, you guys nailed that phrase, but I could really, if that crab step size was a little bigger there or it was a little more difficult, I'll give you more credit. Never once did it come up. Like, there are restrictions that wearing a drum puts on your ability of what you can do and maintain musical integrity of what you're playing. And I think BD plays really well because they're talented, but also because they stage in an intelligent, smart way that takes into account what you can feasibly do with a drum on.
It's funny that we're also talking about this because as I get older, and I guess I'm almost aged out now, but as I get older, I want to have this like hard drill less and less and less. Now when they're like, oh man, you can hold for 16 this time. I'm like, oh,
sweet.
That's what I'm talking about. But I remember my first year at Crown, getting the drill for I think it was our closer, the No One to No One tune, the one we're gonna do after this. But I remember getting that music. It said, 216 or 208 or the tempo was, and getting the drill and just thinking, man, this is the coolest thing in the entire world. When you're a young kid looking at these drum corps shows and you just see the drum line hauling in the back, playing some hard beats, I'm like, man, that's really cool. I really, really want to do that. And I remember my first year just being like, oh man, this is amazing. This is great. And, I'm sure the people have had different experiences, but as I get older,
do that. Like you have to do that at times, but it's like
not all the time.
Battles.
Exactly. Like,
do this and be recognized that you can do it and can do it well, but why just beat yourself down with it?
Yeah.
Pick your spots, use it, intermingle it with stuff that makes more sense, and in that way, if you have a few shorter sections that are really fast and really hard drill, you can spend more time on those harder sections, and they're going to be better as a result.
Yeah.
So,
I
think. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, that being said, I'm not a visual designer. I don't know from
me
up
neither.
top what works and what doesn't work. I just know from member perspective. Sometimes it's cool to have hard drill, but sometimes it's just like, man, this is really just beating me down, and it's making some of this stuff unnecessarily difficult. But like I said, I don't write visual. I don't teach visual. I can't speak for a lot of that stuff. But
I can tell you one thing is that over the last 2 or 3 years, Blue Coats have more and more adopted the BD style of, I guess, show design. I think that that's evident, in my opinion. And I think that that is not hindering their competitiveness at all.
Sure. Yeah. And then, and then also on the other side of the spectrum, I mean, Crown this year, they run and gun the entire time. I mean, tons of notes, really fast tempos, and they were great. So it works for different groups, and different groups do different things successfully. But at least from the BD perspective, they definitely tried to make everything attainable for us. And then time to time, it was kind of cool to throw in a difficult move.
So you bring up Crown again, and I want to ask this question before we move on because I'm just genuinely curious. You obviously did 2 summers at Crown, 1 at BD. Mm-hmm. Can you give some examples of things about the approach to drumming conceptually that the staff taught between the 2 groups, if that question makes sense?
Sure. I don't want to totally overthink it, and the easiest answer is just that it's really not that much different. The biggest way I can compare it is that you're just at Crown, we just played with a little more velocity. You gotta, with that horn line and how loud that horn line plays, you just have to hit the drum if you want to be heard. And if you're not playing loud enough, the horn line's just going to completely overpower you. So most of what we did at Crown was just pretty much exactly the same technique-wise, in terms of the motions and what muscle groups you're using. All of that is exactly the same. I mean, it's taught by a lot of Rhythm X people at Crown. All those guys are Rhythm X alumni. So in terms of all that stuff, it's nothing crazy or different than what I was doing at Blue Devils or Rhythm X. But at times, you just got to hit the drum a little harder. You got to be able to play with some oomph. Specifically in terms of just playing rolls, you got to be able to play loud rolls. And you can tell that obviously, especially in 2018, we had some really, really big 5-lit roll, triplet roll passages where it's I just remember being out on, I don't know if you guys called it spaghetti back then, but
yes, we did.
Yep. So we're just out with Sean Mack and Dan tracking 8 and 25, 8 and 50, 8 and 75, just triplet rolls at fortissimo, so being able to play really, really loud was really important at Crown, which wasn't quite the case at BD. But in terms of the technique and the motions and all that, I mean, it's essentially the same. I mean, there's only so many ways that you can do things, technique-wise.
Yeah.
Generally, you want to use small muscles for faster things, bigger muscles for more open, large things. But in terms of the technique, yeah, it's not really any different.
How much time did BD talk about, because the way a BD plays and they look, to me, comes off as very stylized. Was that something that's defined explicitly, or is it kind of like the vets already play like this and you just kind of naturally morph to match them? Or do they actually take time to break down all right, when we play big, we're going to come more straight up instead of out?
Yeah, there's a few specific things. So that's the big one. So in terms of big double stop hits, that was a weird one for me. I've seen so many, stopped action shots of Crown drumline, and the snare drums are holding up these field goal posts, right, with the sticks. And at BD, you go straight up with the sticks together. Just kind of just little technique differences. But I'm trying to think of any other ones that we did. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but that's definitely a specific one. No, I can't really think of any reason why. It's just a little bit different.
No, it's just what they've done. And
stylistic choice.
Kind of, BD's got some traditions like that they've held on to, even through all these drastic changes drum corps has gone through over the past probably decade. And I like it a little bit. There's a lot of holdover from if you go watch 06, 07, 08 BD to even this past summer, which is really cool to me that they've held on to some of those things. And they've also evolved in certain ways too, obviously. But
Yeah, I'm trying to think of other things that we did like differently, but I can't think of anything in terms of the drumming. I can't think of much that we did differently. What I can say about the rehearsal is that the easiest. I have a lot of people that message me on Instagram and say, "What's the biggest difference between Crown and BD? Like, what do you think?" And the biggest thing that I can say is that anyone who's marched Crown can say that they spent a lot of time in music rehearsal. There's a lot of time in battery block. Obviously, if you're in the color guard, you're not working on music stuff, but horn line is always in the horn circle working on stuff. Drum line's always in battery block tracking, doing stuff, which obviously we do that at BD. But what Crown does with music, BD does with visual. They spend so much time in visual rehearsal. Every single morning block, we'd be in, visual. I mean, sometimes we'd be playing, most of the time we'd be playing at the end of the season, but in spring training, or we call it all days then, I mean, there's times where we would be playing, or not playing rather, we'd be doing 2 blocks a day of visual, just learning drill and working on stuff, and we wouldn't even touch our drums. We wouldn't even play a note.
I remember my friend Dean told me that. He's like, dude, I haven't played my quads in 2 days. I'm like, what?
Yeah, man, it's from being at a group like Crown where we just play all the time. It's very different and very hard to get used to. I mean, obviously,
it probably almost makes you feel nervous, like I should be doing something right.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes the music isn't where it needs to be. And I was super thankful for the guys that marched next to me, Danny Pendergrass, RCC Blue Devil snare drummer. You just always have to keep telling me, like, dude, it's okay. It's like, we're gonna be fine. You gotta chill. And we were fine. We ended up doing fine.
Yeah, like it's so funny to hear, and we've heard other BD alums say the same thing. Like Evan just said, Dean was like, I haven't touched my quads in 2 days, because Evan and I would always talk to each other when tour would first start, post our marching careers, and we're like, man, BD sounds terrible right now. Like, have you heard their drum line right now? Like at like the second show, and then we found out like, oh, they just like don't clean music that much during spring training
because they're so worried about putting the right package on the field. They know that by the end of the season it's going to be clean.
And Ryan had alluded to that too. He's like, they basically like put it in your shoes, like, hey, we designed the perfect show. Now it's like, it's on you guys. Like, we gave you the information, you just got to execute it. So if you execute it, you're going to win.
Well, that's another thing is you got to be able. That's like the mental aspect of it, right? You got to be able to be just as successful with way less reps. You got to be able to. Okay, you're doing this. You got to execute that rep perfectly right now, and you might not get another one for another 10 minutes. Just because of the way that they rehearse. Obviously, long breaks, long water breaks, a lot of downtime. You got to be able to just pick up your drum and just execute. Just do it, which takes a lot of mental energy and mental fortitude to be able to do stuff like that.
Hey, it works. The proof is out there. So. Yeah. Well, I guess to kind of like shift gears a little bit and just get on the book end of this episode, you had talked previously some of your reasons and motivations to go into BD was just to learn how to be the best educator. So now that you have aged out officially of drum corps for sure, you were listed on staff to be with the scouts for this summer, which obviously didn't happen. But is that kind of like the next step for you to try to get some experience teaching or apply this knowledge that you've accrued over these years? What's kind of next for you, man?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm a music ed major. I enjoy teaching. I really am starting to enjoy a lot more writing, the writing and composition aspect of it. So right now I'm teaching at Scouts with Ryan Ellis and some other Rhythm X guys. Andre Wilson is the battery coordinator, and then some other guys that I marched with are some on the tech staff. So I'm enjoying that. We did some kind of online lesson, kind of online assignment stuff over the summer, which was great to keep up with the students in terms of their progress, and that was really cool. But I mean, yeah, I think pretty much following the path that any sort of inspiring drum corps WGI music educator would follow. I mean, I guess my end goal is be someone like Ryan Ellis or Andrew Markworth, write a lot of music, teach some big groups. But I'm really happy with the way that we're doing stuff at Scouts and the way that they're portraying themselves in terms of like the social aspect of things, I mean, I thought it was great that they opened up the membership to everybody in terms of all gender inclusive.
For sure.
We got, I mean, obviously that's a great thing socially, but it's also, we get a lot more talent. I mean, it's
I was going to
great.
say that's a huge recruiting aspect. I've always said that.
Great to get 50% more of the population into our talent.
Especially if you're thinking of like the color guard world, you're really probably getting like 60% more.
Sure.
I mean,
yeah, and I don't know the numbers, but I know it's more students. So it's, like I said, great socially, but in terms of the literal aspect of it, I mean, we're getting a lot more people at auditions, which is great.
Oh yeah, I mean, imagine being a guard instructor who teaches a world-class independent WGI group where it's, I don't know, maybe 50-50 male, female, and you can't recruit half of your members to the group you teach in the summer. Like, it's like, yeah, come on.
Yeah, and I think some groups are able to do that. Cavaliers is obviously very successful, and they were able to do that, and that works for them. And as Scouts now, we're doing our thing, and it's working for us. So I was really excited for this summer. I was looking forward to everything, working with everybody. I think the drum line and the core was going to be great, but unfortunately, things just didn't work out. Fingers crossed for this season. I'm pretty sure drum corps is going to happen in some aspect. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe in some sort of shortened tour, which honestly I think might just be a good thing, even if there wasn't a pandemic.
Well, we talked about this a little bit. I can't remember if we recorded this or if this was something that we just talked about candidly with Dan Shack, but we were talking about like, things that DCI can do to be successful, but like change or adapt. Shorter seasons were one way to accommodate that. First of all, that impacts a lot of things, like the financial aspect of it. You're going to spend way less money. Your overall budget as a core is going to be way less if you shorten it. What is that going to mean to achieve the same excellence that you have been? Shorten the shows.
I think drum corps shows are way too long.
Yeah, I mean, what's a typical show? 11
and a half minutes, probably.
I would say longer if you're counting like pre-show. I'd say closer to 13.
Yeah,
I love
do a
drum
9-minute
corps.
show.
I love drum corps, and they are so long that no matter how good the core is, and part of this may be just being jaded a little bit from the decade that I've been involved with it or more, or watching it, but by like the 7th or 8th minute, I'm like, oh, this isn't over yet. They're still going. And that's not out of not enjoying what I'm watching. It just almost overstays its welcome a little bit and becomes super redundant when you watch multiple cores right in a row.
Yeah, I don't think it is jaded. Like when we watched the top 13, like after 5 cores, I was like, God, I am done.
I had to get a beer. I had to go and I went and paid $8 for a beer because I was like, if I'm going to sit here for 8 more, I need this.
And I mean, if you're jaded, think about this, Mike. If you're saying like, oh, maybe me jaded after 10 years, like the people who judged have probably watched thousands of shows.
Man, I can't imagine the people that have to judge for, like a prelims performance. Dude. I mean, can you imagine being a drum judge for 36 shows or however many cores there are?
You'd probably just like blank out on the field and be like, what?
I mean, can you imagine getting, even we're at the 19th core, like what kind of number are you giving it that's like, I can't imagine trying to come up with a specific number or criteria for that many people. So kudos to those guys who are in the judging world, because that's difficult.
For sure. Yeah. But
I mean, I remember it when I marched getting to like the last 2 weeks of the season and just being like, man, I've been doing this forever.
It's a grind.
And
it's a real
even
grind.
Shortening the season by 2 weeks. I mean, say you started in June, and you just cut 2 weeks off of the season. Financially, logistically, that would just solve so many issues. I don't know. I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen with drum corps, but my opinion doesn't really matter in terms of what's actually going to happen. But I think it would be good for the activity to maybe rein it in a little bit in terms of the amount of time spent.
I think it would be good. This is just a personal opinion, but I think that it would be excellent for the activity to not only rein it in on the time spent, but rein it in on the financial aspect of it. Like, I think one thing that this pandemic has shown is that drum corps are very, very on the hook for how much money they spend designing their shows, uniforms, props, electronics. When you're spending $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 on an electronic system, and now it didn't happen. That's
It's a
rough.
lot.
I mean, yeah, I don't know.
It's a big deal.
I don't know where those funds are coming from, but I can only imagine what kind of hurt some groups are in. Because, I mean, if I had to guess, I mean, probably some people just put it on a credit card, and expect to just pay it back. I don't necessarily know how all that stuff works, but I can imagine that buying a drum corps show in a way, paying your staff and doing all this stuff is not going to bode well if it just never happens. So I think it would be wise for a lot of groups to even just do the show that they were going to do last year. I've heard rumors that some people are going to change things up, and I'm just thinking, why? I mean, why spend the money?
Even announce their shows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we don't know what anyone's show was. Like,
Yeah.
I think some indoor groups are going to do updated versions of the shows they did this past year.
Yeah.
They'll tweak some things that maybe they couldn't change because it was too far in the season, and and I wouldn't fault them for it.
No,
Like
I think that's totally fine. I mean,
Yeah.
you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, we've been going, believe it or not, for about an hour and almost 13 minutes now.
Wow.
So
Look at that.
time flies, man. These things go by real quick. It's real easy to knock out like 90 minutes, and you're like, what just happened? So I think we hit everything on the outline. Cameron, Evan, you guys have anything else?
Not that I can think
Bueller?
of.
Crickets?
Not that I can say on this recording.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. So thanks everyone for hanging out. Make sure, again, you hit subscribe on that YouTube channel. Like the video if you like the content. Subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcast, depending on what your platform of choice is. Patreon.com/AgedOutPodcast for financial support. And even if you're a Spotify or Apple Podcast listener, we mentioned at the beginning the new YouTube content, trying to leverage that a little more, grow that platform to give us more exposure and just make more cool content for all you guys. If you're not a YouTube listener, go hit subscribe on YouTube. Check out the new stuff we're going to be doing. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever we upload a new clip or reaction video or podcast episode. And we will see everybody next time.
Peace.